Zara had always been close with her sister's family. Every holiday, every birthday, she was there, helping with the kids and offering support wherever she could. Her sister Amira had a hectic work schedule, and Zara often found herself filling in when her nephew Joshua needed someone around the house. It wasn't unusual for Zara to spend a night or two at her sister's home when Amira was out of town. She always felt like part of the family, and Joshua, who was now in his early 20s, had grown up under her watchful eye. But things changed one summer when Zara's connection with Joshua started feeling different. It was a regular summer evening when Zara arrived at her sister's house to check in on Joshua, who had been staying there alone for the weekend. Amira was on a business trip, and as always, Zara offered to help. Joshua had just started his summer break from college, and although Zara had seen him numerous times over the years, something was different about him this time. Joshua had grown up, not just physically, but in the way he carried himself. He was no longer the awkward teenager she once knew. He was confident, composed, and for the first time, Zara noticed just how much he resembled a grown man. As she entered the house that night, the atmosphere felt lighter, as if a quiet comfort had settled in. Zara had planned to drop off some groceries, chat with Joshua, and head back home. But Joshua had other plans. "Hey, Aunt Zara, why don't you stay for a bit?" Joshua called from the kitchen, catching her just as she was about to leave. "We haven't really talked in a while." Zara hesitated. She had been planning to relax at home, but something about Joshua's request made her stay. Maybe it was his tone, warm and inviting, or the fact that it had indeed been a while since they'd had a real conversation. She smiled and agreed, setting down her purse and joining him at the table. They started talking about everything: his classes, her job, their family. The conversation flowed naturally, and Zara found herself laughing more than she had in weeks. Joshua had a way of making her feel comfortable, and for a brief moment, it felt like the years had melted away, and they were just two people enjoying each other's company. As the night wore on, Joshua brought out a bottle of wine. Zara hesitated again, but decided one glass wouldn't hurt. They continued chatting, and with each sip, Zara found herself relaxing even more. They talked about life, dreams, and things that were a little more personal than usual, and Zara was surprised by how open Joshua had become. But soon the casual banter began to shift. Joshua's compliments started feeling different. He wasn't just talking about her sense of humor or how helpful she was around the house. He mentioned how beautiful she looked, how youthful she seemed, and how much he admired her strength and independence. The compliments weren't inappropriate, but they were unusual coming from him. Zara felt a strange mix of flattery and unease. "You know, Aunt Zara, you're really amazing," Joshua said, his eyes locking onto hers in a way that made her heart race a little. "You've always been there for us. For me. I don't think I ever thanked you enough for that." Zara smiled, brushing off the comment as nothing more than gratitude. But as the evening progressed, the tension between them became palpable, lingering in the air like a heavy fog neither of them wanted to address. The evening grew later, and Zara realized she had stayed much longer than intended. She glanced at the clock and decided it was time to leave. But as she started to stand, Joshua's voice stopped her. "You don't have to rush, Aunt Zara. Why don't you stay the night? It's late and you've had some wine. You don't want to be driving now." Zara hesitated again. He was right. It wasn't safe to drive after drinking, even if it was just a glass or two. But staying the night, after the strange feelings that had been swirling between them, felt like a bad idea. Still, practicality won out over her unease. "I guess you're right," she said with a forced smile. "I'll just stay in the guest room." Joshua grinned, his eyes lingering on her for a moment longer than they should have. "Of course, Aunt Zara. Whatever makes you comfortable." As Zara settled into the guest room, she tried to push the evening's awkwardness out of her mind. She convinced herself that it was nothing, just harmless banter. But the nagging feeling in the pit of her stomach wouldn't go away. Joshua wasn't a kid anymore, and the way he had been looking at her, talking to her, it felt too close, too personal. She brushed off the thoughts and tried to sleep, but her mind kept replaying the evening. Had she imagined it? Was Joshua really flirting with her? Or was it just her overthinking? Zara was always the responsible one, the level-headed adult. She couldn't afford to let her mind wander into dangerous territory. Sometime in the early hours of the morning, Zara finally drifted off to sleep. But her sleep was restless, and when she awoke, it was still dark outside. The house was quiet, and she could hear nothing but the soft hum of the air conditioner. She glanced at her phone. It was 3 a.m. Thirsty, Zara decided to get up and grab a glass of water from the kitchen. As she tiptoed down the hallway, she noticed that Joshua's door was slightly ajar. A faint light from his bedside lamp spilled into the hallway. Zara hesitated. Maybe he was still awake? Curiosity got the better of her, and she gently pushed the door open a little further. What she saw next made her heart skip a beat. Joshua was lying on his bed, fast asleep. But it wasn't his peaceful sleeping position that caught her attention. It was the fact that his sheets had shifted, leaving him partially uncovered. His shirt was off, his body sprawled out across the bed, and, well, Zara's eyes instinctively darted away. Embarrassed and shocked, she quickly closed the door and stepped back into the hallway, her heart pounding. Her mind raced as she tried to process what she had just seen. It wasn't just the fact that Joshua was sleeping so carelessly. It was the flood of emotions it stirred within her. Guilt, confusion, and an uncomfortable realization of the situation they were both in. Zara returned to the guest room, her face flushed with embarrassment. Why had she even looked? What was she thinking? She felt ashamed, not just for what she had seen, but for the fact that she hadn't looked away quickly enough. It was wrong. All of it. And yet the image of Joshua lying there lingered in her mind, no matter how hard she tried to push it away. The next morning, Zara woke up early, determined to leave before things could get any more awkward. But as she gathered her things, Joshua knocked on the guest room door. "Aunt Zara? You up?" Zara froze for a moment, then composed herself. "Yeah, come in." Joshua opened the door, smiling like nothing was wrong. "I just wanted to say thanks for staying over. It was nice having you here." His casual demeanor made her wonder if she had blown the whole thing out of proportion. Maybe he didn't even realize what had happened last night. Maybe it was all just innocent, and her mind was playing tricks on her. But deep down, she knew that things had shifted between them, and there was no going back to how things were before. "Yeah, no problem," Zara said, trying to act natural. "But I should get going." Joshua's smile faltered for a moment, but he quickly recovered. "All right. Well, if you ever need a place to crash again, you know you're always welcome here." Zara nodded, giving him a quick hug before grabbing her keys and heading out the door. But as she drove away, she couldn't shake the feeling that this wouldn't be the last time things got complicated between them. The days following that night seemed endless for Zara. She tried to push the strange encounter out of her mind, but it clung to her thoughts, making even the simplest tasks feel heavier. Joshua, though her nephew, had begun occupying a space in her mind that made her uncomfortable. She convinced herself that she had overreacted, that nothing serious had happened. But deep down, the unease was growing. Zara kept her distance from Joshua for a while, choosing to focus on work and other commitments. She didn't want to risk another uncomfortable encounter, and avoiding him seemed like the safest option. But Joshua, unaware of the turmoil brewing inside her, continued to reach out. One evening, as Zara was winding down from a particularly long day, her phone lit up with a message from Joshua. Joshua. "Hey, Aunt Zara, haven't seen you in a while. Are you okay?" She hesitated before responding. Part of her wanted to ignore it, but another part felt guilty. He was family after all. She couldn't avoid him forever. With a deep breath, she replied, "Zara. Hey, Joshua, I've been okay, just busy. How about you?" Joshua. "I'm good. Just miss hanging out with you. How about you come over this weekend? We can catch up? I'll cook dinner." Zara's stomach tightened. Going to his place again felt risky, But maybe if she acted normal, everything would go back to how it used to be. She couldn't let one awkward moment ruin their relationship. Zara. Sure, sounds good. Saturday? Saturday evening came and Zara found herself standing at Joshua's door once again. This time she was determined to keep things casual and light. She was overthinking everything. Joshua was just being himself, and she needed to stop reading too much into things. Joshua greeted her with a warm smile, and for a moment, things did feel normal. They chatted as he finished preparing dinner, talking about family, work, and life in general. But underneath the surface, Zara could still feel a subtle tension. After dinner, they moved to the living room, where Joshua had set up a movie for them to watch. Zara chose a comedy, hoping it would lighten the mood. But as the movie played, she noticed that Joshua was sitting a little closer to her than usual. His arm rested on the back of the couch, his fingers barely brushing against her shoulder. Zara's heart raced, and she felt the air between them grow thick with unspoken tension. She tried to focus on the movie, but she could feel Joshua's gaze lingering on her, his presence overwhelming. Then, as if in slow motion, Joshua shifted closer, his hand lightly touching hers. Zara froze, her mind racing. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. She quickly pulled her hand away and stood up. "I should go," she said, her voice tight. "I have an early morning tomorrow." Joshua looked surprised, a mix of confusion and something else flashing across his face. "You don't have to leave so soon, Aunt Zara." But Zara was already grabbing her bag, her heart pounding. "No, really, I should. Thanks for dinner." She left quickly, not giving Joshua a chance to argue. As she drove home, her thoughts were a whirlwind. What was happening between them? It wasn't just in her head. Joshua had felt it too. But she couldn't let it go any further. This was dangerous territory, and she needed to stop it before it crossed a line. Days passed, and Zara kept her distance once more. But the tension between them was like a shadow she couldn't escape. Every time her phone buzzed, she expected it to be Joshua, and when it wasn't, she felt both relief and disappointment. One evening, Joshua finally called. Zara's heart skipped a beat when she saw his name on the screen. She hesitated before answering. "Hey, Joshua," she said, trying to sound casual. "Zara, can we talk? I feel like something's been off between us, and I don't know why." Zara took a deep breath. She couldn't avoid this conversation forever. "Yeah, I think we should talk." They agreed to meet at a nearby cafe, a neutral place where Zara hoped the atmosphere would help keep things under control. When she arrived, Joshua was already there, waiting. He looked nervous, fidgeting with his hands as she sat down. "Zara, I don't know what happened, but things between us have changed," Joshua began. "It's like we can't just be ourselves anymore." Zara sighed, not knowing how to respond. "Joshua, I think we've both felt something. Something we shouldn't have. But you're my nephew, and this can't continue. We need to put some space between us." Joshua looked down, his expression conflicted. "I never meant for things to get weird. I've just always admired you, and maybe I misread things. But you're right. We need to set boundaries." Zara nodded, relieved that Joshua understood. "It's not that I don't care about you, but we need to keep things as they should be. We're family, Joshua, and that's important." Joshua finally met her gaze, and Zara could see the sadness in his eyes. "I get it. I'm sorry if I made things uncomfortable. I just want us to be close like we used to be." "We can still be close," Zara said gently. "But we need to keep things appropriate. Let's just move forward from this, okay?" Joshua smiled faintly. "Yeah, you're right. Thanks for being honest with me, Aunt Zara." As they parted ways that evening, Zara felt a weight lift off her shoulders. The tension had been addressed, and while things might not return to exactly how they were before, at least they had cleared the air. Sometimes confronting uncomfortable truths was the only way to move on. And for Zara and Joshua, it was the only way to preserve their relationship before it was lost forever.